My name is Catherine Kennedy and I live in a little village on the lovely shores of Lough Derg in North Tipperary. On Thursday morning, the 10th of January 2002 at 8:15 a.m, my family's life changed forever. My husband Liam sat me down on our bed and told me he couldn't go to school that day. He couldn't teach anymore because he couldn't remember what to do. Liam was in his early 40s. Even though it was only the beginning of our journey with Alzheimer's, in some way it was the end of 2 years of me knowing there was something wrong, something not quite right with Liam. 2 years of pleading and trying to get him to accept that something was wrong. Okay, what do I mean something not quite right? Liam's short-term memory was terrible. He seemed very distant, distracted, and would constantly keep asking me the same question. Liam was a fantastic carpenter before his teaching career, but now he was having difficulty doing the most basic job. He was having difficulty measuring a simple basic requirement. For something that gave Liam so much pleasure and joy over the years was now becoming a nightmare to him. Liam also looked after the banking for us, but I would get a call from the bank to say he'd go in with his school cheque, he'd leave it on the counter, and he'd leave the bank. Those 2 years also involved 2 visits to our local GP. The first visit was in March 2001. Liam went only to keep me quiet, because I nagged him so much. The GP was not at all concerned. He actually laughed. I think he thought I was the one, there was something wrong. Liam was saying there was nothing wrong with him. He was teaching full time. The doctor proceeded to ask Liam a few general questions. He then looked at me and said, "Catherine, there's nothing wrong with Liam," and he sent us on our way. We went back again in August 2001. At this time, we met the new GP. The older one had retired, who I have to say he was amazing and very understanding of my fears. But as Liam was still teaching, and at this stage he was very much in denial, we left and we both agreed that we'd keep a closer eye on things. In September 2001, Liam went back to school and things seemed to be fine. We had planning permission to build our new home, which was one of Liam's dreams. So by Christmas that year, we were all set to go. Planning permission, mortgage, everything ready. Just after Christmas, we went skiing to where we had gone 2 previous years. We got to the airport that day and unfortunately the flight was cancelled. We had to stay overnight at a nearby hotel and Liam soon realised that he'd forgotten his shaving foam. A small thing you might think. But I told him not to worry, that we'd get some in the airport the following morning, and we did. As we arrived in our hotel in Austria, I noticed Liam seemed to be acting very strange. He reminded me again that we needed to buy shaving foam, and every day of the holiday after that. He had, when I pointed this out to him, he started to cry. This was a clear admission that he knew something was not right. He had spent 2 years in denial, and now it was sadly time for him to face reality. During the holiday himself, Liam had no recollection of where we were, and as you can imagine, he was very upset by this. We got through the week somehow, and when we arrived home on the 6th of January 2002, neither of us spoke for a couple of days. Well, not to each other, but not about what happened. I didn't actually know what to say at that stage. Liam went back to school on the 10th of January, and that's the morning he got up and said, "Kate," he says, "I can't teach anymore." Everything had changed. We both went to speak to the principal that day, and Liam left the school forever the same day after nearly 20 years of teaching. It was definitely a day I will never forget. Liam was absolutely devastated. I remember us being in the principal office and the 3 of us were crying. What I didn't know at the time was when Liam had gone back the previous September, shortly after the second GP visit, his colleagues had noticed that something was amiss with Liam. He no longer joined in playing cards in lunchtime in the staff room. He never remembered to turn up for hurling training, and he would put students out of his room, which they were delighted, and never remembered to bring them back in. I really wished someone had told me what was going on and that Liam was acting in this way in school. I would have felt that I would have got some support, but nobody said anything. So there we were, Liam at home, 2 young children, 5 and 8, not knowing what to do. I think I walked around in a daze for a week or 2 or 3 probably. So between appointment after appointment and visits up and down to Galway, we went ahead and started to build our new home. I don't know what I would have done with Liam for those months if the house wasn't being built. It gave him a reason to get up every morning. He was so proud. So after several months of tests, procedures, we got the diagnosis we were dreading. And I can tell you, getting the diagnosis wasn't easy. The process was long and exhausting. I feel I spent most of the time trying to persuade the doctors that there was something seriously wrong. Sometimes I felt I was going crazy. But I persisted, and then finally a blood test was sent to the Queen's University Hospital in London, and it was confirmed that Liam had Alzheimer's disease, a rare genetic type called familial Alzheimer's. In a couple of years that followed, Liam's sister Anne and his brother Shay were also diagnosed with a rare strain of the illness. They were both under 50. The doctor that day in Galway said we should visit London to see a specialist, as he had no idea what we were to do next. We left the hospital that day in August 2002 without, I add, even a follow-up appointment, and headed home to our 2 children. Liam was 42 and I was 32. We then travelled to London in October and met a specialist. Unfortunately, the only advice he could give us was for me to take out of a power of attorney and give us a prognosis of 4 to 6 years. I soon realised there was little, or to be more accurate, there was no support of someone of Liam's age. When you get a diagnosis like this, at any age should not matter. And the more I looked for support, the more I was told services were for the over 60s, etc. For me, there was the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland, my local support group, and wonderful colleagues from Liam's school and the community around me. But when you get a diagnosis like dementia, age shouldn't come into it when you're looking to get for supports. Because Liam was so young and was diagnosed with younger onset Alzheimer's, there was literally no supports for him. No respite, no free GP, no nothing. Despite all the turmoil in our lives, we moved into our new home in November 2002. I tried to keep everything as normal as I could for the children. Well then, I didn't really have a choice. Homework still had to be done, dinner still had to be cooked, and the mortgage still had to be paid. I was coping okay. I had great family support. I was in constant touch with the GP and the Alzheimer's Society helpline. I used to spend hours on the phone, who were just amazing and helped me every step of the way. The Society helped me get in touch with a local support group who took me under their wing, and the support I got from them was just amazing. But as the months went by, minding Liam was getting more and more difficult. So only a year after his diagnosis, Liam was admitted to hospital in October 2003. He didn't even get 1 year in his new home. At this stage, the decision was taken out of my hands and Liam was not going to be coming back. So on November 18, 2003, Liam moved into full-time nursing care in Nina. This was obviously devastating for Liam and us. The early days in the care home were particularly difficult. He knew where he was, he knew he'd been put in a home, and he was very angry. However, there was only a few short weeks to Christmas, and we took him out on Christmas Day to my sister's for the first time. He thought he'd never get back. He thought his room and bed would be gone. I used to take him out on regular visits then to my mum's, my friends. They'd always invite us dinner. But each visit was getting harder because he just wanted to go back. He was afraid the room and the bed would be taken. At around this time, when Liam was in the nursing home, his sister Anne in London was also put into full-time care, and his brother Shay into a separate nursing home in Nina. This was very difficult, as you can imagine, for the wider family. They had just 2 siblings left. I remember in the early days of visiting Liam, I would take him for a walk every morning and collect the children from primary school. They would go in and do their homework with Liam and sit and play with him in his room. Our daughter Niamh, who was to receive her first Holy Communion the following May, We brought her dress and she modelled it for her daddy in the nursing home. I vividly remember one thing Liam said to me that day. He turned to me and he says, "Do you know what?" He says, "I think she should be a model someday." Little did we know that Niamh would be crowned Miss Ireland 2016. As the years went by and the children went through their teenage years, it became more and more difficult for them to see their daddy fading away. So their visits became less and less. Liam did not recognise them anymore, or me. It's funny, really, because he still remembered my mum, so I'm not really sure how that came in. He once, I think it must be the cruelest of illnesses, seeing Liam just waste away. He once was a strong, 6-foot, gentle and caring, loving husband and a wonderful father. But the last 6 years in the nursing home, he did not recognise his own family or his children. Liam died on November 18, 2011, after spending 8 years in full-time care. He was 54. In the years since Liam passed away, the family strongly believes in advocating for people with dementia and their families and carers. As I mentioned earlier, my daughter Niamh was crowned Miss Ireland last year. It was a wonderful year and we had something to celebrate. She has become a wonderful advocate with people with dementia, and I know she loved making a contribution to the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland as a role as an ambassador and helping out with the Tea Day fundraising, mini marathon, etc. She undertook some media interviews on the issue as well. This work has given her such a lift, and as she says herself, it has let her be peace with it all. She talks about it so much. It has really helped her, become peace with it all. We'd both actually appeared side by side in the interview on TV3's Ireland AM in May for the Tea Day, which was a great experience for us both. We really think there's a lot to be gained by bringing dementia out of the shadows. The more we talk about dementia as a society, the better. The more understanding there is of dementia, the better, and the more awareness there is of dementia, the better. It's just so good for everybody in society to talk about dementia openly. When I look back on my story, it's just like reading someone else's. It's like a dream, or you'd probably say more of a nightmare. But it's amazing when life throws something at you. It's amazing how you cope. I don't really know how I did it, but you just do. Liam would have turned 60 just Monday gone. We miss him every day, but I still know he's with us. Before Liam was diagnosed with dementia, I honestly never came across the word. But my family were so lucky to have a wonderful support system in the Alzheimer's Society, and they are there to help and support you. If you're looking for support, please get in touch with them. My own mum, Kitty, who was an absolute rock to me, to all Liam's illness, was herself diagnosed with dementia late last year and has recently been placed in full-time nursing care. As you can imagine, I was absolutely devastated, not only for the fact that I had to start visiting a nursing home again, but I was losing another person that I loved and relied on so much. But my only consolation is that Kitty had a wonderful long life, and hopefully she will turn 90 next year. Before I leave you tonight, I have some words of advice. Firstly, if you or someone you know is showing signs of early dementia, then please seek an early diagnosis. It is so important. Secondly, please talk about dementia in an open way and be inclusive to others. And finally, if you are supporting a member or a loved one or going through this condition yourself, then speak out, persist, and don't give up. Thank you.